Our next speaker is Margaret Lafar. Margaret is the Assistant Director of the Division of Air Resources at the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation in Albany. Margaret, it's all yours.
Well, thank you for having me today. So first, I'd like to start off by just giving you a little bit of an overview of the Division of Air Resources at DEC. We do have 6 bureaus that are in our central office in Albany, and then 9 regional offices across the state. The bureaus that I mentioned, first we have stationary sources that oversee facility permitting, inspections, enforcement, complaint response, and provide regional support. Much of the permitting, inspection, enforcement, and complaints are handled in the regions, though. We have a Mobile Sources Bureau that oversees vehicle regulations and our inspection and maintenance program oversight. Air quality planning, they do the planning for our state implementation plans and emissions data. State implementation plans are our plan that we send to EPA to describe how we're going to meet the standards or maintain our attainment status going forward. So that's where we would explain what controls we might need to include or what regulations would help to achieve those goals. Air quality surveillance is really what we're here to talk about today. This is our ambient monitoring group, and they also do some special monitoring studies as well. The Air Quality Analysis and Research Group, which is kind of my background. They provide expertise in air toxics, meteorology. They do facility impacts modeling, and also some long-range ozone modeling that is helpful in that planning stage for what is needed to attain the standards. And then we have our Quality Assurance Bureau that does they are separate from the monitoring staff, but they provide that QA for monitoring, but also QA of permits, and they oversee stack testing reviews and some fiscal issues as well. So sources of air pollution, and Rick mentioned this somewhat. What I wanted to get at here is there are a lot of sources of air pollution, and not just the traditional smokestacks that people think of. Mobile sources constitute probably the largest sector of our emissions inventory, and by mobile sources, I mean on-road and non-road, so cars and trucks, but also construction equipment, lawn equipment, trains, and airplanes. Area sources is also a pretty large sector of our emissions inventory for the state. And that would include things like gas stations, dry cleaners, auto body shops, print shops, many small sources that we would lump together as kind of an area source. And we would regulate those mostly with regulations about that type of source. But it also includes things like home heating and manufacturing as well. Stationary sources is what most people think about when they think about air pollution sources. So these would be power plants, oil refineries, asphalt plants, waste incinerators, and then natural sources also do impact, as we all know this year after the wildfires, our air quality, and it can be wildfires, but also things like um, volcanic outfall and so forth. In this graph, it also, or in this picture here, it does also highlight that there are primary pollutants and then secondary pollutants. And as Rick mentioned, the primary pollutants are emitted directly into the atmosphere, and secondary pollutants are formed from some of those primary pollutants, and a combination of all of these sources can affect what the concentrations of the secondary pollutants are. You will note that particulate matter is both a primary and a secondary pollutant. So it's both emitted directly from sources and it is formed in the atmosphere from, a combination of different pollutants and chemical reactions. So in New York, we do have 54 monitoring sites across the state. This is just a quick look at all of them. I have a zoomed in view of the New York City monitors as well. We sample a variety of pollutants at these monitors, and we each year have to put together our air quality monitoring plan that is goes out for public review and also is submitted to EPA each year. So if we want to make any changes to the our monitoring plan or monitoring sites, we would need to let EPA know, and we would have to get their approval to shut down sites. And this just shows the sites within New York City. Rick showed a few pictures as well. Here is an example of one of our rooftop monitoring sites. A lot of time, siting is very important with monitoring. New York City, especially, and some other urban areas, it's very difficult to find space. So many of our monitoring sites in these urban locations are on rooftops. So what are the uses of this data, and what is the data availability? We do provide for most of our data, or any of the data that can be reported in real time, it's updated on our website on an hourly basis. The data are also reported every hour to EPA, and are included in EPA's Air Now website. It's used for AQI and air quality health messaging. We also use that to help us in our forecasting and pollution tracking, and scientists and other agencies or public citizens might use that data. The quality assured data is available and uploaded to EPA's website every 3 months. It is on that link that Rick provided at the AQS database. This is the data that's used to determine compliance with standards, and it provides an archive for that data, and it's available nationwide. One thing I did want to bring to everyone's attention is, we have been doing monitoring for quite a long time, and when we look at trends, it shows it shows the improvement we've made in air quality. For particulate matter, we've monitored for particulate matter 2.5, the fine particulate matter, since 2000. Prior to that, we we were looking at PM10, and then and even prior to that, total suspended particles. So didn't show those all on one graph because they're somewhat different pollutants. But as you can see here, we have made significant progress in lowering the pollutant values of PM. Ozone, similar to what we see for PM. However, because we are still working to achieve attainment in the downstate metro area. It primarily we are lumped together with New Jersey and Connecticut in our non-attainment area. It's all one metropolitan area, and I think the monitor that controls that area is actually in Connecticut, but likely due to some pollutants that are transported from New Jersey, New York, and into Connecticut as well. Let's see. SO2, or sulfur dioxide, is a pollutant that, again, we've measured this since since the 1970s, and probably even before that, but this was the record of data that we had. The standard is the current short-term standard is 75 parts per billion. We are well below that, and in fact, for most of our monitors statewide, we are nearing like the detection levels. Many times we're not able to measure values even, at those detection levels. So we've made significant progress, and much of this is due to the reduction in coal use in New York, the reduction in sulfur and fuels for power plants and heating oil. And so it has really made a significant difference here. And for nitrogen dioxide, again, we've been looking at this for years, since the 70s at least. And again, we are quite quite below the standard of 100 parts per billion. NO2 is emitted from sources of combustion. That's the primary source of those. So things like power plants, cars, trucks. That's where the majority of those emissions are coming from. So air quality index is a way for EPA and state environmental agencies to communicate about the air pollution and give that information in an easy to use way, so that that color coding is really helpful for people to understand when they might need to take some actions or take precautions because of the air quality, the current air quality. We do forecast air quality index every day of the year. For ozone, ozone is generated as a secondary pollutant. Ozone needs sunlight and heat to be produced in that chemical reaction. So our ozone is really during those warmer months, and ozone season is April through September. Particulate matter it can happen any time of the year, and so we do forecast that year round. And we will issue a air quality health advisory when we are predicting AQI above 100. Those advisories go out as press releases. We have increased our messaging about AQI this year, especially after the wildfires, and really trying to get the word out that this is happening. This, our forecasting has been going on for a while, but I don't think as many people knew about it as we would like. So again, we have these categories. It's important for people to get an understanding of where they're at in the sensitive groups area, because people that have other health concerns or children may be more sensitive to pollutants. And so if you're looking at the air quality forecast, you'd want to keep that in mind. And some people may be impacted at a lower value, and need to be aware of that and take precautions as needed. So when we're doing our forecasting, we are looking at the observations, those monitored hourly concentration values, satellite data, other meteorological data such as cloud cover, wind speed and direction, and the vertical mixing of the atmosphere. We also use the regular weather models, but because you have to have a good handle on what the weather is going to be before you can understand what the air quality might be. And we have specific air quality and smoke models to help us with those forecasts as well. So this summer, as you all know, we had some very high particulate matter values due to wildfire smokes. And June 5th through the 8th was when we saw the worst of that this summer. And we were forecasting for and we had issued advisories. I will say that this event, because those fires were so close, was much more much worse than we expected. We had not seen impacts from wildfire smoke like this before here in New York, and that's really due to the proximity of the wildfire and just the weather patterns that we were having caused very high, and in fact went into the hazardous range for air quality this summer. One thing that I think is very important for you all to know is are the links here. We have our links to our air quality index forecast, the monitoring website, EPA's Air Now, EPA's fire and smoke map, and some information from our Department of Health, that if you have specific questions or concerns about exposure and health impacts, DOH will provide that. One note on the Air Now or the fire and smoke maps, they do show the hourly data. That hourly data uses the same color coding as AQI, but AQI itself is based on the form of the standard. So for PM 2.5, that's going to be a 24-hour average is going to be the final result. But during an event or when you're looking at real-time data, that is just an estimate of what that 24-hour average would be. It's called a nowcast on EPA's Air Now. So that could change from when you're looking at it in real time to if you look at it later on and look at an archive of the data. Another thing I wanted to mention, as I said, we do a lot of special projects, and we've done other community air quality projects. Right now, we are doing the data analysis for a year-long statewide community air monitoring initiative that was required by the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. We have hired a contractor to conduct monitoring in 10 disadvantaged communities. It is a mobile screening. It does build on our stationary monitoring, but to obtain estimated annual averages for each pollutant that's being monitored. And the purpose of this initiative is to identify air quality issues in disadvantaged communities for future emission reductions. So some of those are going to be longer term solutions, like diesel emissions reductions, regulations addressing stationary sources. But in the short term, we've been able to see a few things where we've actually sent out some enforcement. Mostly it's what we're seeing is impacts from trucks or cars. And we've also been very engaged with the communities, and they've been giving us some feedback during our update meetings. And this is just showing the 10 different communities that we, in the study areas that we completed this monitoring in. So it was the Buffalo, Tonawanda, Niagara Falls study area, the Capital District, Bronx, Manhattan, Queens, and Brooklyn, Rochester, Syracuse, and then Mount Vernon, Yonkers, New Rochelle, and then out on Long Island, one of the study areas comprised of several towns there. And at the end of the study, so this is the phase we're in right now. We're trying to analyze this data. We will have maps that are publicly available in an interactive website that shows all the results of the monitoring. That, and again, that monitoring data is going to help inform strategies for mitigation and control of pollution across the state, but specifically in disadvantaged communities. We have in each of the 10 study areas, we have co-conveners where we have interested residents and community based organizations that are working, we are working with to help put together those recommendations, and that's coming in the early part of 2024. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you so much for that
Sure.
update on what the DEC is doing.